friends. This is going to be a fun one today. We're going to go over this really fun jellyfish that is got this like super fun iridescent-y glow. That's the wrong word for it. It's fine. In Procreate on the iPad Pro, a couple things to mention right off the bat are you want to create a canvas that you can remember this part of the jellyfish smaller, because you're gonna want to have all of this glorious situation coming off and playing and whatnot. It's one of everybody's biggest mistakes. They make when I say they and people, I'm talking about myself. So maybe this isn't your problem, but just keep that in mind. Ratio wise, you're gonna want to allow for that. So think about that as you're choosing your canvas size. So I am going to choose a vertical canvas. I'm going to choose 12 by 16, 300 DPI. This is just so I can make a print out of it if I want to. But everything's basically very straightforward. I will be using a particular brush set called Ultimate Acrylic Brush Set or Pack. It's by Trailhead. I've linked it below if it's something that you want, but I'll be telling you different types of brushes that you can use based off of your own creative choices as we go along. So no, you do not need this brush pack. I just got it, so I'm really excited to play with it. But I also got like their full pack because, as you can see, they've got acrylic, airbrush, charcoal, crayon, gouache, ink, marker, oil, pastel, watercolor, textures, and like it's all in one pack. And then they all have like so many brushes. It's incredible. Anyway, I'm excited, as you can see. So we're gonna play with that. This is like my excuse to play, and I've chosen to go with acrylic today. So at the end of the video, I'll show you all the swatches in this one too, if you want to stay and look at those just for funsies. But I'm going to start with the acrylic fine detailer. So I have my base layer open. The fine detailer might be similar to like a textured ink brush, or you could just go for something that doesn't have texture on the edges, like a monoline or something. And then I would just pick a base color. Don't get too hung up on what the color looks like or is right now, because you can always change it later. That's why we like to work in layers. If you know me, you guys know I'm all about working in layers. So I'm going to choose orange for now, and I'm just going to basically draw like kind of a mushroomy shape. And then I have to remember that my canvas is only so big, so I'll probably want to draw it like this big. So I'll make that, let's see, grow with it. I always enlarge my canvas. I'm going to try not to create this. So basically just this loose sketch, and I kind of like it to look more imperfect, just because it like kind of adds some movement, because if it was too much, like too mushroom, I don't know, it just wouldn't translate how I want it to. Now, I'm going to use color fill, and the reason why is just as a quick tip, because I like to throw these in here all the time. If you like texture brushes, I get it. So a lot of people will color in, and I've said that before in tutorials too. So I am just as like, I'm not dismissing that I haven't said this, but I've changed my ways and I will own it. I will just use color drop. And the reason why is because this is actually, I'm going to contradict myself here in a little bit, but for now, just a rule of thumb, you can always add texture with a clipping mask, and because texture brushes have opacity built into them. So if for whatever reason, like let's say you change to a black background, you're going to see straight through to that black background. So that's not always what you want, what you see is what you want to get, right? Because that's what you're drawing on. So if you do it solid and then add texture on top of it, you can always add white, you can always do stuff like that. But it's just an option. But the other part of it is you could create a solid white background and then draw with your texture brush, however you want to do it. It's just an FYI. The reason I'm going to contradict myself is because we are going to add some transparency to this eventually, because it's a jellyfish, but whatever, you get what I'm saying. That's why I'm using color fill. I like to tell you guys about my creative process, because some of you may be able to relate and take that on as your own like decision making. Knowledge is power. Arm yourself with knowledge. Okay, creating a new layer on top of that one, and I'm going to choose this like neon-y yellow color because that's how I'm feeling in this moment. And I am just going to basically create about a third of the way up, just like an arch. Maybe, yeah, there we go. And then I'm going to line it on the bottom and then fill that. And then if there's any spot that like needs to be filled up, I can do that. And erase. Whoops, that's too big. If you want the same brush to erase with, let's say you have this textured edge and you don't want like a sharp erase, you can always hold your eraser down before you select it and it will grab the current actual brush that you're using, and then it will mimic that, which is pretty snazzy. Okay, so now that I have that on, I can actually jump right in and start to create my depth. This is not true sign language for depth. It's fine. All right, so where do I want to start? I'll start with the main layer. And so what I'm going to do is select plus to add a new layer on top of that one. And then I'm going to create a clipping mask. What that does is I could do anything to the layer on the clipping mask, but it's only going to show up on the pixels for the layer beneath it. So that's pretty handy. That's what a clipping mask does. All right, so I'm gonna choose a brush to add texture. I would recommend just doing anything airbrushy unless you like more texture than that, but I'm gonna use acrylic watered down. So this has a little bit of texture to it still, but it is more airbrushy. Okay, so first I'm gonna go to that orange and then I'm just gonna bump it up in hue a little bit and then also in brightness. So see, it's this nice kind of like yellowy orange now. And I am going to just take that textured airbrushy look and just go along the outside. Depending on how large your airbrush is, you might want to even go out this far. So like if I'm out this far, it's going to be hard to see kind of because this color is pretty light, but you can see how it's grabbing the outside there. So you can go larger and then have that effect, which is nice. All right, so that kind of just adds a little depth. And then what I want to do now is actually grab a darker color again. So I'll just go back to that basic orange, or the base color that I was using, and just hit like the edges. And so what this is doing is kind of just identifying that there's a harder outline, or you know, like a shadow behind it. So it still has that light source, but then it adds a little bit of depth. And then I'm gonna go to this bright red. I know that it's kind of like an analogous color, but I still really like to do shading in unexpected colors. I just think that it really like lets something pop quite a bit. So you'll see I am going along the edges. If I use the side of this brush, like the tilt control, it's a lot lighter, blends a lot cleaner, but if I use the tip, it's really got a lot of opaque ness to it. So I'm gonna use that to my advantage. And then I'm also going to do that to the base down here, not quite as much. And then I'm going to concentrate that depth more on one side than the other because I want there to be the illusion of a light source. Okay, so now I guess that's right. I contradict myself with the transparency thing. So I'm going to go to my eraser. I'm going to hold it down so I can be on the same brush that I'm using. Actually, yes, do that. But if you are using this brush pack along with me, let's say you have it or you went and grabbed it, cool. I'm going to use Acrylic Rough Brush. This one's really pretty. And then I'm going to create a little bit of this effect that I really like. It's kind of like a watery, watercolor-ish type of thing. Okay, then I'll go to the watered down eraser, and I will push in. Oh, that's why. It's because I'm on my, there we go. I'll push in some, you want to go to your base layer to remove the background. Or I mean, you get what I'm saying, to actually remove it. So I know this is contradicting what I said, but the thing is, when we do this, it actually pushes that transparency of the jellyfish while keeping all of that pretty texture that we did. So I'll show you an example when we change the background color. So see, it has that transparency in there. And I can show you how to brighten that up if you do go to a darker color background at the very end. We're gonna do this technique to make it look like it's glowing at the very end anyway, so don't worry about your color choice exactly. One other thing I want to do actually is on this top layer, no, on the bottom layer, I'm going to bring it, I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to go back to that fine detailer brush, and then I'm just going to create kind of like this imperfect edge. And the reason why you see all these effects still showing up is because the only thing that was actually blocking the texture that I had added is that this is on above it. So technically that effect went further down. So I'm just basically pushing in some more interest here by, I mean, you could do this just with a wavy line if that's your style. I just wanted to not have it be so straight. There we go. Okay, so see how that like really makes it pop? We're gonna do the same thing to the bottom. So on this layer, same thing, clipping mask. So create a new layer on top of it, clipping mask, and then I'm gonna go back to this yellow color and I'm gonna actually make it greenish, like a lime. And then I think I'm just gonna leave it like that. I'm not even gonna go darker just for fun, but you could go darker. And then I am going to lightly, very lightly hit the edges. This isn't my shading or my shadows just yet. This is just like adding that like glowing hue. And I know these colors don't make sense together. I'm kind of living for it, but you can always, the next step will be to play with these colors. So I probably won't keep it this way, but that's one of the things I love about playing with color. It's like you can draw in whatever colors that you want to, whatever you're feeling in that moment, and then make it make sense later. Like just, it's all about the process, you know? Okay, so now I'm gonna go to a darker version here, maybe even an olive. Yeah, I like that. Okay, this is looking like a mushroom. I can't do it. Dang it. It's looking more like, and I want it to look like a jellyfish. All right, so I'm gonna change this color now so I don't get caught up in this moment. I'm gonna turn my clipping mask off so I'm not distracted by it. I have this main layer. I'm gonna show you a couple of ways that you can recolor. The first is easy. You just go to your adjustments panel, which is your magic wand, go to hue, saturation, brightness, layer, and then you can just play with the hue here. It's super, like, that's the easiest way to do it. I like this pink, that's fun. And then you can change the brightness, something like that. I think the color on top is what's making it look. I'm gonna change that instead. So I undid everything I just did and I'm gonna change the top color, sadly. It's not sad, it's gonna be fun. Whoops, wrong layer selected. This one. Okay, so let's see. Wait, what layer am I on, guys? Why isn't that changing? This is like troubleshooting city. Oh, there we go. I don't know why it wasn't changing. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of stick to the palette that I'm at. Ooh, I like that. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. And then I'm gonna turn this back on and I'll match it. So I go to adjustments, hue, saturation, brightness, layer, and then change that. The other way you can do this is by using the recolor tool, which is really handy and one of my favorite ways to do it. But if you're already kind of happy with like the saturation and the brightness and whatnot, it's just a really easy way to change the hue with using the slider. Okay, so now I can go back to that olive that I was going to use and start adding some shadows. And the shadows, I'm going to bring this way down, are going to go along the edge here. And I'll go a little softer, but then harder toward the actual edge. And I'm gonna bring this down a little more than what I actually want it to be. And the reason why is because it's gonna add the depth that I want when I go even darker closer to the edge. So I'm gonna do that in just a second so you can see what I'm talking about. And then I'll bring this down right here. Okay, now I'll go even darker, pretty dark actually. Oops. And then make that a little smaller and just go toward the very edge. And it might seem really dramatic, but just remember we're zoomed in. So when I zoom out, it makes more sense. And you start to really kind of see how that effect is working the way that we want it to. And it's always weird to add like such harsh shadows on top of such like a fun, bright color. But like this is actually the same technique I do with leaves. I just bring the shading in even more because it's like that yellow color is what really makes it pop. Now this one, I think I want to actually, yeah, if you want to soften it, I just decrease opacity. I don't even bother with like going crazy with everything just because I like to work smarter, not harder. Okay, so now that that's done, that's pretty fun. I might actually even change the hue. I feel like the olive kind of throws it off, but there we go. Just bringing a little more coolness to that color. Now that this part is basically done, you can start to add the next part, which is really fun. So if it helps you to group these together, you totally can, or label them, whatever organization that you like to do. And to do that, you would just have one selected, pull to the right on all of the layers, and then say group. You're not merging them, you're grouping them. And then you can label this like main, body, if that helps, or collapse it, keep it, whatever. It helps a lot of people who are organized. It helps me. I'm just not very organized. So it's fine. All right, so the first thing I want to do is grab this lime green because I'm obsessed with it. And then this is a good time to use a brush, like a brush pen style. So you'll notice it because you'll see like this taper in here. And basically what that means is when you press down and then you lift up, this one has a fall off. So you can adjust brushes and whatnot, but we're not doing that right now. So I'm not going to confuse you with it. But basically, if it has this taper, it typically means if you press down and then you use less pressure, it gets thinner. These brushes are more advanced, so it also has this fall off for texture, which is nice. So like the lighter you press, the more texture you have, the darker, or the more you press, the more opaque it is. But just for this part, I'll show you with just like my brush pen, which by the way is free on my website. I'll link that too. All right, so, whoops, it looks like I left some of that here. So from here, what I want to do is actually start at the bottom. And I'm going to apply, how big is this? Okay, I'm going to apply pressure, and then right away, I'm going to release pressure. And then I'm just going to go to about the middle of the base here. And notice that I'm not like doing anything special with the way that I'm moving my arm. I'm just allowing motion to happen. And that's it. Okay, now I'm going to choose this color because I want to add some dimension, and I'll go in a few times with that. Maybe some having some overlap in there, which is fun. Maybe one more. Okay, so notice that they are wider at the bottom, which just kind of brings it to life more. It makes it look more like a jellyfish, right? You could also make these wider. They could come out all the way. I just personal preference, I like it when they're centered. I don't know. It's just like a stylistic choice. Okay, and then lastly, I'm going to bring the brush even to a larger size. I'm going to create a new layer, and now I think I'll choose like maybe a cooler tone of this, just barely cooler. And then I'm going to, you can start from the bottom or start here. I'm going to make shorter. I don't like that color. I'll go darker with this one. shorter and like wavier, that's too big, lines that kind of vary in pressure. So like sometimes it's thicker, sometimes it's thinner. You can go slower like that if it helps. So I'm going to keep these since they're separated on one layer, but then I'm going to choose a new layer because I'm going to overlap a little bit, and I'll show you why it helps to layer like this when use a new layer when you have that overlap. Like right now it looks like it's blending all together, but we're gonna make it look pretty cool. I'm also gonna move these both over so they're more centered. So then from on this layer, these are the ones I'm going to add depth to. So I'm gonna create a new layer on top of the first pair that I made, make a clipping mask, stay on that layer, and then grab a color that's in my, grab a color that's in my octopus, in my jellyfish. I'm gonna go back to the brush set that I wanna use here, Trailhead, where is it? Here we go. And grab a texture brush. I'm gonna use the large green stroke, I think. Okay, and so I'll use the lighter, which ones are these? Okay, the lighter color on the part where it's like, you know, lighter. But see how like when the overlap starts happening, it starts to set apart from it, which is pretty fun. And I actually think I'm gonna bring this color darker because I want the ones in the foreground to be the ones that pop, since these are in the background. So I'm actually going to turn that off and do the same thing to the top layer with this color so that I don't lose it. I wouldn't lose it because it's in my history, but I still just want to put it in here so I can see the difference of what I'm about to apply. So you can see I'm just, I'm being kind of careless with the way that I do it. I just want to add that color in. Okay, so then the back one, I'm going to go back to that layer. See how they blend in? I don't want that. So I'm going to go to my adjustments and just bring it down so that it is dark. And then I'm also going to kind of cool it. Ooh. Ooh. I think I might want to go blue. That's kind of fun. All right. And then to add even more dimension, I'm going to go on the other side and then get rid of and soften some of these lines. So I'll grab that green and then I'll just take it a little bit lighter. And you can create a separate clipping mask that will go along with this. Any clipping masks on top of a layer will all skip each other and go to the layer that's not a clipping mask. So you could do that. I'm just doing this all on the same clipping mask because I'm not that picky about my shading on these, just because they're so little and they're just an accent, right? Okay, so those are nice and dark. I feel like they're missing a little dimension, so I'll go a little bit lighter, and I'm gonna find a brush that has some more spacing. So like this grain smudge maybe. I need a different color. Yeah, so that has a little more spacing. So I could go significantly darker. Yeah, I'll do that. Or like significantly lighter. So see how it just like separates that? I'm a texture, like I'm obsessed with texture. So that's my problem. It's the way it's gonna be. Real quick, I'm noticing that my highlight color that I was obsessed with is too close to this color. So I could do one of two things. I could keep it this way and change this color, or I could change my highlight color, which is I think what I'm gonna do. So I could make that darker or just different. I'm gonna make it like this yellower, sure. And then go in with the shadow color. Actually, I'm just gonna go in with texture because that'll blend it right out. That same texture brush, which is the grain smudge. Cool. And then maybe one more that's lighter. So then you have this like awesome looking jellyfish, right? If you want to add texture to the ones below that, you can. So clipping mask to that one. I really like this color, so I don't want to stray too far away from it, but you can add a little texture in just for some added interest. I like texture. I'm just thinking about the people I know who do not like texture at all, and I'm just hearing them in my head like, no, it's not happening. Okay, so there we go. Now comes the fun part where we are going to, I'm going to put all these little leggy guys together in a group, collapse it. Now we're going to change the background color, and after that we're going to make it glow. So those are the final steps. So my background color, this you can play with on the color wheel. So if you select background, you could do that, or you could create a new layer and fill it, however you want to make your background. But I'm just going to start to kind of play. I'm really predictable when it comes to my colors for backgrounds. Like I find that I'm always going with like this like purpley blue color or a cream. I don't know what the deal is. Okay, so, but I'm really predictable because I do like this like bluish purpley color. But yeah, just go along your wheel, see what looks good. You could go pretty dark, or you could do something that's pretty light, so that you can really put the focus on your art. I guess you would either way, like if you go black. Oh, I do like that. Don't worry what you're seeing right here, the transparency, because we're going to make it glow now. I'm going to try black this time, or maybe like a deep dark green. Yeah, I like that better. Like a foresty, like hunter green that's a little cooler. Okay. Transparency is there, but we're going to make it glow. If you chose a light color, go with white. If you are in this like darker realm, I'm going to select that color and go like several shades brighter, like several. So, oops, I have a group selected. Create a new layer, drag that layer to the very bottom. Cool. And then select an airbrush of some kind. I'm going to go back to the same one in this set that I like to use that I can never find. Acrylic watered down. And then you want to just make that pretty big and just very lightly. You want to go behind that jellyfish, and no hard edges like this. Try to smooth them out and then just kind of follow its silhouette. And I'm going to go a little lighter right here than right here, just because that's like its main glowing fun area. You can bring this out further if you want. And then a trick that I like to use is, whether you're a perfect airbrush or you're textured like this, to make it like really have a better effect of that glow, is to go to your adjustment layer, go to Gaussian blur layer, and then just pull that up a little bit. See how it totally took away the texture? But doing that just allows it to spread, which is nice. You could even do this with hard lines. So I'm going to put another version of this on top of it. I do this a lot when I want to emphasize it and then bring it down more so that the glow is like really centered. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to just like a fine detail. It doesn't matter what you use because it's going to blur out, but I'm just going to basically trace along the edges here, just loosely. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so it's on its own layer, and then I'm going to fill that and then go to my Gaussian blur and then watch. See how it's like on top of the one that I just did, which is out here, but it's just a little bit more to really emphasize it. I don't want to emphasize it that much down here though. So 2 things I could do. 1, change the opacity of the top Gaussian blur that I had, which I do like that. I'll do both. So I'm going to change the opacity, bring that down, but I'm also going to go to my eraser, and I'm going to grab that airbrushy style again, and then just get rid of some of it that's in the leggy areas. What are they called? Not tentacles. I don't know. I promise I'm smart. I know this stuff. My brain's just not working right now. Okay, so then you have basically your gorgeous glowing jellyfish, which I just love so much. Lastly, I know I said we're done, but this is just like an optional fun thing to do, is to go on top of everything, pick a really light color like this yellow maybe, or like a white, anything that's like glowy like, grab just a brush that you can mark make with. So I think just the fine detailer for me is going to be fine. I'm going to make that kind of big. Yeah. And then just go through and add these like tiny little marks along the areas here that just kind of bring it to life. I'll show you what this looks like from a distance when I'm done with it, because it really is just fun. Look at how fun that is. Okay, and then is it on top? Yeah. You can do that through this area too. Just try to make it not look too much like a mushroom. But it's just like this glowy. If you bring it on the outside, it just kind of looks iridescent, like there's bubbles in the water. It brings it to life, right? Okay, so that's basically it. I'm going to show you this whole brush set in 2 seconds, so stay tuned if you want to watch that. I'm going to speed it up and make it fast and easy, and that way you can see if you like them, because there's like seriously so many in here. So there's that. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful. Please tag me if you create one at the Pigeon Letters, because I really want to see like your color choices is mostly what I'm most excited about always. But yeah, I hope that was fun for you guys. Be sure to subscribe. All the things that YouTubers say that I'm 35 years old and don't want to say. But all right, I'll see you guys next time.